If I could only think of how to cut you away, I wouldn't be so frightened or scared to be enlightened. It's kind of difficult to keep my mind on a day that I didn't really mind it. It's in my face, I'll find it. The fields of colors bleeding and it's so far from home. The thoughts keep coming forward, I wish I wasn't so bored. Does it really matter if I'm dying alone? I often try to fake it, what's in my face I'll take it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Whew. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
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 Thank you. Thanks.
Oh, thank you.
Baby's got a burger and a sugar and that shake is all go down. Baby's got a burger and a sugar and that shake is all go down. Corrosion to the thighs, erosion of her pride. Baby's got sugar, baby's got corrosion now, corrosion now. Baby's got it.
Good morning. It is 11 a.m. on the East Coast, 8 a.m. on the West Coast, and somewhere in between, it's something. It's 10:13 here in the central of all time zones. I'm your host, that guy. Shout out everybody. We got Kate's in the house. What's up, Kate? Good to see you. Steve Wolfbrandt. Good to see you, my friend. Miss Lainey Peterson. Hello, Lainey. Good to see you, doll. We got Willie Bragg in the house. Willie, good job last night doing that show just for Cowboy Kitty's friend. We're gonna talk about that a little bit later in the show. But thanks for bringing that up last night. And yeah, she could definitely use our help for sure. Steve G in the house. Steve G, good to see you. And others that may be lurking or watching this later. Go start over on the old Rumbly Tumblies there. Good to see you, pal. Yeah, so it is Friday. It is Friday the 8th of August already. Wow. Yeah, here we are, all up in that August. It's almost football season. I believe I don't really care about the other sports balls. I don't even really care about football that much, but I do like my New Orleans Saints, and I do pull for them. So, you know, one little bitty satisfaction thing. What's up, Desert Man? It's good to see you. Yeah, Willie, we all got to stick together, so it was the right thing to do. That was very cool of you, though. But that you're a cool dude, so that's not surprising that you would do such coolness. Yes, we're in the dog days of summer, Desert. That's right. I was told that you weren't supposed to go swimming like in the creeks and stuff this time of year because then you start itching or something. I don't know, something weird. Or maybe they just didn't want you in the water. I don't know. But, oh shit, we did it anyway. It's hot. Hot down south, man. In that summertime heat and that humidity, got to cool off. And a good way to do that is go down the old local creek and dip yourself in there. Or at least it used to be. I don't know, but that's probably so full of chemicals now. It's probably just disgusting. The old days. But then again, back then, the Ohio River was on fire too because of all the chemicals in it. So it's not like things are that much better today when it comes to that kind of stuff. People always trying to sneak shit into the waters. Yeah, so anyway, Let's get things started. But first, I need money. I need that money so bad. Please give me that money. Sell this. Buy this shitty coffee of mine, please, that I'm selling. Here's Desperation Blend Extra Dark Roast Ground Coffee. Cast out of the fires of Mount Doom. This intimidating blend will leave you and your family held captive and in need of a hostage negotiator. The combination of poisonous fumes and nauseating odor will have you joining in on one of the multiple class action lawsuits currently pending in no time. Does the touch of money make you break out into scabies? Are you jonesing for the thrill of dry heaves and the consequences of ill-fated decisions? Well, grab a bag of Desperation. That's Desperation Blend Extra Dark Roast Ground Coffee, found online and wherever New Coke and Crystal Pepsi are sold. Yikes. Also use promo code GRIFTER to pay an additional 20%, because, just paying regular price doesn't seem right now, does it? All right, we did that. You just quit all fantasy football, do not abide genocide. No, I don't blame you. I don't do it. I used to do that fantasy football stuff. It was kind of fun. I did it with some pals of mine, but way back. I haven't done it in years. Just doesn't feel right. But my Saints got a brand new coach, and there's a whole bunch of new people in there, so I'm a little curious as to what happens. The actual sport of football itself is, to me, is what is most compelling. Not the fact that guys hitting each other on the field and hurting themselves, giving themselves CTE and concussions and stuff like that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual strategy of the game, right? Where you have as an opposing force, you're trying to get to the goal that you're trying to reach, and you have various ways of doing it. You can run with the ball, or you can toss the ball forward to someone, or you can run it yourself. So there's strategy involved, right? And you don't know what the defensive players, the people who are trying to keep you from achieving your goal, you're not quite sure how they're going to play you. But if you're a smart coach, you kind of know, right? So when you apply those things in life, as far as I'm not talking about team sports, but I'm talking about bringing people together to do things in the world that benefit each other and the world as a whole. You need to come up with strategies. So there's always going to be people trying to stop you. So it's always good to know your enemy, know their strategies and their ways of trying to stopping you. If your traditional methods don't work, then you go to non-traditional methods. See, that's kind of, and I guess there's strategy in baseball and basketball too. But to me, football, that's the one that kind of sticks with me. So anyway, I'm not saying you should go out and watch football. I'm just saying, go Saints. Yeah, who dat? They play San Diego, the LA Chargers this week in an exhibition game. So we'll get to see who their quarterback's going to be for the season. It's exciting times in New Orleans if you're into the sports ball. So meanwhile, here in America, we got New Orleans is in America, but you know what I'm saying. We got a little thing going on with India. I know India's always just seemed to me like the biggest Israel ass kisser, but now it seems like maybe they're not playing too well with their friends in the United States, as the U.S.-India row over Russian oil and trade risks wider fallout. Uh-oh. Somebody's not in love anymore. Look how far apart they are. He doesn't even hold me or cuddle me. He always wants me to hold and cuddle him. He's like, come on, man. So, I don't know where that came from. Your enemy doesn't like you. Well, I guess so. That would make him your enemy, right? Good call. Trumpy's blistering attack on India over trade imbalances and its continued purchase of Russian oil risks unraveling 2 decades of diplomatic progress, officials and analysts warn, as rising domestic pressures push both nations toward a harder stance. Giggity. What's up, Global? Water has always been polluted. That's why alcohol was popular. The environmental laws were temporary in the last 1,000 years. Yeah, I mean, in theory, we could have clean water. It's just, it shouldn't be that hard to do, but I guess it is. Facing growing domestic criticism, Indian opposition parties and sections of the public have called on Prime Minister Narendra Modi to resist what they describe as Trump's bullying tactics. On Wednesday, the U.S. president signed an executive order slapping an extra 25% tariff on Indian imports. Really, he's not supposed to be able to do any of these tariffs without congressional approval. But when congressional majority is on your side, I guess you do have a You're just kind of cutting out the middleman. Doubling the existing rate in the retaliation for India's oil dealings with Moscow. Ooh. While India has emerged in recent years as a key partner for Washington in its strategic rivalry with China, its large U.S. trade surplus and close relations with Russia, which Trump is seeking to pressure into agreeing to a peace agreement with Ukraine, have made it a prime target in the Republican president's global tariff offensive. Trump's taunt that India could buy oil from arch-enemy Pakistan has also not gone down well in New Delhi, said two Indian government sources. India has also rejected repeated claims by Trump that he used trade as a lever to end a recent military conflict between Pakistan and India. In an unusually sharp statement this week, India accused the U.S. of double standards in singling it out for Russian oil imports while continuing to buy Russian uranium, hexafluoride, oh, you scandalous, palladium, and fertilizer. A little something on the side there, a little side piece. On Wednesday, it called the tariffs unfair, unjustified, and unreasonable, vowing to take all actions necessary to protect its national interests. But New Delhi knows that any further escalation will hurt it in matters beyond trade, said the source. Unlike China, India does not have leverage like supplies of rare earth materials to force Trump's hand to improve the terms of any trade deal, they said. In recent years, successive U.S. administrations, including Trump's first, carefully cultivated relations with India with an eye on it as a vital partner in long-term efforts to counter the growing might of China, but analysts say Trump's recent moves have plunged the relationship back to possibly its worst phase since the U.S. imposed sanctions on India for nuclear tests in 1998. India is now in a trap because of Trump's pressure. Modi will reduce India's oil purchases from Russia, but he cannot publicly admit to doing so for fear of looking like he's surrendering to Trump's blackmail, said Ashley Tellis at Washington's Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. There's another reason, too, why he might be buckling, too, and that's coming up later in our Propaganda Watch. Shh, tease. We could be heading into a needless crisis that unravels a quarter century of hard-won gains with India. Indian state refiners have in recent days stopped buying Russian oil as discounts narrowed and pressure from Trump rose, Reuters has reported. A more pressing challenge for India, analysts say, is the stark divergence between its priorities and Trump's political base on key issues such as work visas for tech professionals and offshoring of services. India has long been a major beneficiary of U.S. work visa programs and the outsourcing of software and business services, a sore point for Americans who have lost jobs to cheaper workers in India, who will now lose those jobs to AI very soon. Relations with India risk becoming a football in American domestic politics. See, it all goes back to football. Warned Evan Feigelbaum, a former senior State Department official under the Republican presidency of George W. Bush. Issues that directly touch India are among the most partisan and explosive in Washington, including immigration and deportation, H-1B visas for tech workers, offshoring, and overseas manufacturing by U.S. companies, and technology sharing and co-innovation with foreigners, he wrote in a LinkedIn post. LinkedIn. Since a 2008 deal to cooperate on civilian nuclear technology, the two countries have deepened intelligence sharing and defense cooperation and expanded interactions with Australia and Japan through the Quad grouping aimed at containing China's dominance in the Indo-Pacific. But fractures have appeared despite Modi's rapport with Trump in his first term, and then former President Sleepy Joe Biden. I love sleeping so good. Sleeping so good. 12 Super Bowl tile, 2 Super Bowls, 6 titles. Nice. See, I know we should be able to have fun like that again without all this other bullshit happening. Images in February of Indians deported by the U.S. on military planes, their hands and legs shackled, horrified the country just days before Modi went to see Trump, seeking to stave off high tariffs. The relationship was also seriously tested in late 2023 when the U.S. said it had foiled a plot with Indian links to kill a Sikh separatist leader on U.S. soil. New Delhi has denied any official connection to the plot. The Modi regime's credibility in the U.S. has gone down, said Sukhdev Muni, a former Indian diplomat and a professor emeritus at New Delhi's Jawaharlal Nehru University. I knew they was going to throw one in there on me. And maybe there are people who think that India or Modi had to be brought back on track, if not taught a lesson. And if that trend continues, I'm quite worried that the challenge is quite powerful and strong for India to navigate. So one Indian government source said India needs to gradually repair ties with the U.S. while engaging more with other nations that have faced the brunt of Trump tariffs and aid cuts, including the African Union and the BRICS bloc that includes Brazil, Russia, China, and South Africa. India is already making some moves with Russia and China. Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to visit New Delhi this year. And on Tuesday, Russia said the two countries had discussed further strengthening defense cooperation in the form of a particularly privileged strategic partnership. India has also boosted engagement with China, a change after years of tensions following a deadly border clash in 2020. Modi is set to visit China soon for the first time since 2018. Russia will attempt to exploit the rift between the U.S. and India by proposing the restoration of the Russia-India-China trilateral and new projects in defense, said analyst Alexei Zakharov at the Observer Research Foundation in New Delhi. India will undoubtedly be mindful of structural factors such as sanctions against Russia and will seek to find a compromise with the Trump administration. So there they are. They're kind of navigating the tides between America and Russia. I mean, look at it this way. Would you rather work with mad people like the United States and the West and their crazy genocidal partner Israel, or hop on the BRICS train, which they already are, and embrace it and start something new to counter the West? We'll see. Meanwhile, Trump slaps 100% semiconductor tariffs, 100% tariffs, barring U.S.-based manufacturers. So he's trying desperately to make this work-at-home thing help. Apparently, Apple is supposed to be starting to manufacture here now, too. Remember the Seinfeld episode when George wants to go out on a high note? Yeah, I know, right? You get a good laugh, you're like, that's it, I'm out. You can't build on it, and if you try to, you're just being greedy. Trump announced plans to impose a 100% tariff on imported semiconductors, excluding companies that are either manufacturing in the U.S. or have committed to doing so. Reuters reported on Wednesday. The initiative is part of a broader effort to bring high-tech manufacturing back to U.S. soil. Speaking from the Oval Office on Wednesday, Trump clarified that companies like Apple would be exempt from the new tariff. Apple has pledged to invest an additional $100 billion in the U.S., expanding its domestic production footprint. Yay! So does that mean, they'll have the suicide fence nets around American buildings too? I'm pretty sure they're not going to pay those people either. For companies like Apple, which have committed to build in the U.S., there will be no charge, Trump told reporters. He also warned companies against reneging on such commitments. If for some reason you say you're building and you don't build, then we go back and we add it up, it accumulates, and we charge you at a later date. That's a guarantee, he added. While impactful, Trump's comments did not amount to a formal policy announcement. The specifics of how these tariffs would be applied remain unclear, most like everything else. Companies with significant U.S.-based operations, such as Apple and Taiwan's TSMC, are expected to avoid the proposed 100% import duty. TSMC operates manufacturing facilities in the U.S., which positions major clients like NVIDIA to bypass additional tariff costs. Trump's remarks triggered swift international responses. South Korea's trade envoy stated that chip giant Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix would not face the new tariffs thanks to favorable terms under an existing trade agreement with Washington. Japan confirmed that it would not face harsher tariff conditions than other nations. Meanwhile, the European Union reported an agreement with the U.S. for a flat 15% tariff on most exports, including semiconductors, cars, and pharmaceuticals. In Southeast Asia, industry figures voiced strong concern. Dan Lachica, president of the Philippine semiconductor industry, warned that Trump's plan could be devastating for his country's exports. In Malaysia, Trade Minister Tengku Zafrul Aziz cautioned that his country could lose access to a key market if its semiconductor products became less competitive under the proposed tariffs. Yeah, so these smaller countries are going to get, because they ain't been sucking the old cockaroony of the West like these other places have. Oh, I'm sorry, trade agreements. That's what they call them. NVIDIA, a leader in artificial intelligence and graphics processing units, is planning to invest hundreds of billions of dollars in U.S.-based chip production over the next 4 years. Though the company declined to comment on Trump's announcement, its positioning within the U.S. market is expected to mitigate the effects of the proposed tariff. Brian Jacobson, chief economist at Annex Wealth Management, remarked, "Large, cash-rich companies that can afford to build in America will be the ones to benefit the most. It's survival of the biggest." Asian semiconductor firms with investments in the U.S. experienced a boost in share prices. TSMC and Samsung rose 4.4% and 2% respectively. Silicon wafer producer Global Wafers, ooh, sounds delicious, which operates a Texas facility, saw its stock surge by 10%. While Samsung and TSMC offered no comment on the announcement, Global Wafers stated it has adopted cost-cutting measures to maintain its competitiveness amid policy uncertainty. The Biden administration previously introduced a $52.7 billion subsidy program to support semiconductor manufacturing and research. As part of that initiative, the Commerce Department persuaded 5 leading-edge chip makers to establish U.S.-based factories. Despite these efforts, U.S. production accounted for only 12% of the global chip supply last year, down from 40% in 1990. Martin Chorzempa, interesting last name, of the Peterson Institute for International Economics, noted there's so much serious investment in the United States in chip production that much of the sector will be exempt. Chorzempa, that sounds like one of those drugs that they sell on the old people channels, right? Chorzempa, ask your doctor. Chorzempa is right for you. Chorzempa also pointed out that Chinese companies like SMIC and Huawei, I'm pretty sure, I always mispronounce that name, are unlikely to qualify for exemptions. However, since their chips are mostly embedded in devices assembled in China, a lack of corresponding component tariffs might limit the effectiveness of Trump's proposed measures. And that's the last point right there. Tariffs might limit the effectiveness of Trump's proposed marriages, whatever. So what are these tariffs actually doing? Are they going to bring these companies home? Are we going to see production at home, which will equate to higher job wages and lower prices here in America? Those last two, no. I'm sure they'll make a profit. At least they won't be paying tariffs, right? No, hey, CBC voter, what's up? No, he worked for Major League Baseball. He didn't work for the NFL. He worked for the Yankees, remember? George did. Yeah, so you have that, and as a result, the U.S. manufacturing sector sputtering as Trump tariffs hit consumers. Yay! After multiple delays, these reciprocal tariffs, first announced this past spring by Trump, went into effect yesterday, even as the American economy is showing serious signs of weakness. As reported by CNBC, the new tariffs hit nations all over the world and included particularly hefty tariffs on longtime trading partners such as Brazil, which got hit with a 50% tariff as Trump tries to pressure the country to drop criminal charges against former President Jair Bolsonaro. Come on, we'll drop these tariffs if you let our boy have a little leeway there, who allegedly plotted a coup attempt after losing the 2022 general election to current President Da Silva. While many longtime U.S. allies, such as the European Union and Japan, struck deals with Trump ahead of this week's deadline, their products are still getting hit with 15% tariffs that are far higher than any duties placed on foreign goods in decades. On his Truth Social page on Thursday morning, Trump celebrated the implementation of the tariffs and declared that tariffs are flowing into the U.S. at levels not thought even... He needs to stop saying that dumb shit, like not ever thought be possible, the world has never seen, ever before. You know he's fucking lying and don't know what he's talking about when he adds dumb shit like that at the end. However, the president's triumphant tone does not match what consumer sentiment and economic data are currently showing. Wall Street Journal reported on Wednesday that the American manufacturing economy, which Trump has claimed will benefit the most from his tariffs, is currently sputtering as companies face higher costs of key inputs such as steel, aluminum, and copper. What's up, P-Stuff? Good to see you, buddy. From March to July, U.S. manufacturing activity contracted, according to the Institute for Supply Management's monthly survey. Noted Wall Street Journal, the manufacturing PMI last registered at 48, below the 50 score that differentiates growth and decline. I don't know what PMI stands for. Did they say that up here? Maybe they did. I don't know. The journal also cited top domestic manufacturers such as Whirlpool, Polaris, and Harley-Davidson, who say that consumer demand has been hit in recent months as consumers pull back spending in the face of the president's tariffs. In fact, Polaris CEO Mike Speetzen told investors during a recent earnings call that consumers are really reluctant to go spend right now unless they really need to or they're fortunate enough to have the financial flexibility to do so, which most people don't. Yeah, that's called everyday, regular-ass people struggling. Their CEO guy. Data released last week also showed that the American labor market overall has nearly ground to a halt over the last 3 months, hence Trump getting rid of the labor chick, as the economy added an average of 35,000 jobs per month from May through July. As if all that weren't enough, the tariffs are expected to hit Americans with price increases across a wide range of products during a time when voters say they are still very anxious about the cost of groceries. Anxious, to say the least. Oh, yeah, that's right. Leor Tal, campaign director for the progressive advocacy organization Unrig Our Economy, blasted Trump's tariffs as a tax on working-class families, raising costs on everyday goods, killing jobs, and more. He also challenged Republican lawmakers who in the past have spoken up against the tariffs to use their power to retake from the president the authority to levy taxes. When they return from their month-long vacation, will Republicans finally change course and vote to end these tariffs since, according to them, they are bad for the economy? Nah. If they truly want to support their constituents and not just millionaires and billionaires, they should. Well, we know what they want. We know who they really support. Senator Ron Wyden, a Democrat out of Oregon, delivered a similarly scathing denunciation of Trump's tariffs, which he labeled backward economic policies. The management of these tariffs has been utterly chaotic, secretive, and ripe for corruption as Trump and his advisors scheme and deal behind closed doors, he said. Regardless of whether Trump still doesn't know what tariffs are or is lying about them, he should never be forgiven for jacking up the cost of living by thousands of dollars per year after campaigning on a promise to bring prices down across the board. Representative Rosa DeLauro, a Democrat out of Connecticut, ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee and still heavyweight champion of the world, said that Trump's tariffs are a complete betrayal of his 2024 campaign pledges to bring down the cost of living. The damage is only beginning, she said, of the tariffs. Everything from shoes to dish soap to diapers to American automobiles is about to cost more. Trump and the billionaires he serves could not care less. To them, your cost of living increase is just the cost of doing business. Right. So everything's about to go up. And Trump's going to sell you a bill of goods saying, nah, well, this is just temporary. And then it's for 4 years. And then he's gone. And then everything's fucked up. Right? So, yeah. And we were talking about that jobs report, right? It still doesn't change the fact that even though he fired the Labor Department person who was in charge of those numbers, it still doesn't change the fact that the numbers suck. Expert warns of stagflation as unemployment rolls hit 4-year high under Trump. And these weren't great under Biden either. So don't get it twisted that this is some sort of Trump hate thing. This is a current government hate thing. The flow of abysmal U.S. economic data continued yesterday with the release of figures showing that the number of Americans collecting unemployment benefits has reached its highest level in nearly 4 years, heightening concerns that the Trump administration is pushing the country toward a period of stagflation, which is, I guess, stagnant inflation. Is that what that is? They're clever words. Today's unemployment report, coupled with last week's jobs data, suggests that we're fast stumbling into stagflation with fledgling jobs growth and rising prices. Andrew Stetner, unemployment insurance expert at the Century Foundation, said in a statement following the new Labor Department numbers. The department said that 1.97 million Americans were receiving unemployment benefits during the week ending July 26th, an increase of 38,000 compared to the previous week. Now, that's those. That also doesn't count the number of people who have been denied unemployment or have used up their unemployment. So those numbers are much higher. In contrast with the president's assertion of bustling job creation, said Stetner, Americans can't get off of unemployment benefits in an economy that has stopped adding jobs outside of healthcare. The government figures were released a day after private data showed that employment in the U.S. services sector fell last month as prices rose. Meanwhile, U.S. manufacturing activity contracted in July at the fastest pace in 9 months, even as President Trumpy claimed his erratic tariff regime would revive the sector. Private data confirms the government numbers, and firing the head of BLS can't change that, said Representative Gwen Moore, referring to Trump's decision to terminate Bureau of Labor Statistics Commissioner Erica McIntyre in the wake of last week's terrible U.S. jobs report, calling into question the reliability of future federal data. Republicans are killing jobs and feeding inflation, Moore added. Trump is making stagflation great again. The recent data, combined with surveys showing American consumers are increasingly struggling with the rising prices of groceries and other necessities, appears to vindicate warnings from economists and other analysts that the U.S. economy is in growing trouble under Trump's erratic stewardship. So it's growing, all right, but it's the trouble that's growing, not the prosperity. The risk of stagflation has risen meaningfully. Olu Sonola, an economist at Fitch Ratings, wrote in a client note, inflation is drifting further from target. Private sector economic growth has slowed materially, and the labor market has just sounded a warning bell. Rachel West and Laura Valle Gutierrez of the Century Foundation wrote earlier this week that Trump's economy of uncertainty is leading to widespread anxiety, with more than 3 in 4 Americans saying they're concerned about a possible recession. I think we're already in one. And Trump's budget law, which slashes health care and food assistance for everyday Americans to pay for more than $4 trillion in tax cuts for the wealthy and corporations, compounds Americans' uncertainty and fear about what the future brings, they add. See, that people, they talk about, yeah, we need to cut taxes. Then you find out your taxes aren't getting cut. But taxes were cut. You see how that works? Just not your taxes. It's better than being them damn communists. Well, I don't know. You see some of these communist countries, even under siege and, just constantly being hammered by capitalist countries. They're still around. They're still doing well, even under those circumstances. So let's switch things over to immigration. And we go down to Florida, see the Florida man down there punching cars and eating dinner out in the middle of the road and taking drugs to the police to see if they got ripped off. That's the Florida shit for you. Judge orders temporary halt to construction of Florida's Alligator Alcatraz. The detention center, what's that about? A federal judge yesterday ordered a 2-week halt to construction at an immigrant detention center in the Florida Everglades dubbed Alligator Alcatraz, as she considers whether it violates environmental laws. The facility was quickly built 2 months ago at a lightly used single runway training airport and can hold up to 3,000 detainees in temporary tent structures. The site was continuing to be built out, but the order by the U.S. District Judge Kathleen Williams temporarily bars the installation of any new industrial-style lighting, as well as any paving, filling, excavating, or fencing. The order also prohibits any other site expansion, including placing or erecting any additional buildings, tents, dormitories, or other residential or administrative facilities. The order doesn't include any restrictions on law enforcement or immigration enforcement activity at the center, which is currently holding hundreds of detainees. Williams issued the temporary restraining order during a hearing and then followed up with a written order later Thursday. Environmental groups and the Miccosukee tribe have asked Williams to issue a preliminary injunction to halt operations and further constructions. The suit agrees that the project threatens environmentally sensitive wetlands that are home to protected plants and animals and will reverse billions of dollars worth of environmental restoration. We're pleased that the judge saw the urgent need to put a pause on additional construction, and we look forward to advancing our ultimate goal of protecting the unique and imperiled Everglades ecosystem from further damage caused by this mass detention facility, said Eve Samples, the executive director at Friends of the Everglades. A spokesperson for Republican Governor Ron DeSantis decried the ruling, but said it will have no impact on immigration enforcement in Florida. Yeah, it will still torture people down there still. Alligator Alcatraz will remain operational, continuing to serve as a force multiplier to enhance deportation efforts. Also known as an internment camp or possibly a concentration camp. Spokesperson Alex Lanfriconi said in a statement, plaintiffs presented witnesses Wednesday and Thursday in support of the injunction, while attorneys for the state and federal government were scheduled to present next week. Following Thursday's testimony, Paul Schweip, an attorney for the environmental groups, asked Williams to issue a temporary restraining order that would at least prevent any new construction at the site while the preliminary injunction was argued. Williams asked Florida attorney Jesse Panuccio if the state would agree to halt construction so that she wouldn't need to issue the restraining order. She pointed out that anything built at the site would likely remain there permanently, regardless of how the case was ultimately decided. Panuccio said he couldn't guarantee that the state would stop all work. This sparked an hour-long hearing about the temporary restraining order, which will be in place for the next 2 weeks, while the ongoing preliminary injunction hearing continues. Temporary restraining orders are meant to maintain the status quo during a legal dispute for a short period of time, while preliminary injunctions are generally issued after a longer hearing and last until the final resolution of the case. The crux of the plaintiff's argument is that the detention facility violates the National Environmental Policy Act, which requires federal agencies to assess the environmental effects of major construction projects. Panuccio said during the hearing that although the detention center would be holding federal detainees, the construction and operation of the facility is entirely under the state of Florida, meaning the NEPA review wouldn't apply. Schweip said the purpose of the facility is for immigration enforcement, which is exclusively a federal function. He said the facility wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the federal government's desire for a facility to hold detainees. Williams said Thursday that the detention facility was at a minimum a joint partnership between the state and federal government. Christopher McVoy, a soil physicist, hydrologist, and wetlands ecologist, testified for the plaintiffs on Thursday that at least 20 acres of asphalt have been added to the site since the Florida Department of Emergency Management began construction based on a tour that he took of the facility in June, just days before it opened, and subsequent aerial photos of the site. Tents, trailers, and other heavy equipment have also been moved to the airport, which previously had just a few small structures. Dylan Rayo, a licensed professional geologist, testified that the new paving could lead to an increase in water runoff to the adjacent wetlands and spread harmful chemicals into the Everglades. The lawsuit in Miami against federal and state authorities is one of two legal challenges to the South Florida Detention Center, which was built more than a month ago by the state of Florida on an isolated airstrip owned by Miami-Dade County. A second lawsuit brought by civil rights groups says detainees' constitutional rights are being violated since they are barred from meeting lawyers or being held without any charges, and a federal immigration court has canceled bond hearings. A hearing in that case is scheduled for August 18th. In a court filing in the civil rights lawsuit on Thursday, the state of Florida said that detainees have been allowed to meet with their lawyers for 3 weeks at the detention center, which opened July 3rd, despite some initial delays due to logistical challenges in having private contractors build infrastructure and install equipment. Since July 15th, the state has granted every request for a detainee to meet with an attorney, it said. More meetings are taking place every day, and there have been no complaints, according to the filing. Construction, maintenance, and operation of the detention center are done by the state of Florida without involvement of the federal government, though the state is granted authority over the detainees through an intergovernmental agreement with federal agencies, the court filing said. Under the 55-year-old federal environmental law, federal agencies should have examined how the detention center's construction would impact the environment and identified ways to minimize the impact and followed other procedural rules, such as allowing public comment, according to the environmental groups and the tribe. It makes no difference that the detention center was built by the state of Florida, since federal agencies have authority over immigration, the lawsuit says. Attorneys for federal and state agencies last week asked Williams to dismiss or transfer the injunction request, saying the lawsuit was filed in the wrong jurisdiction. Even though the property is owned by Miami-Dade County, Florida's Southern District is the wrong venue for the lawsuit, since the detention center is located in neighboring Collier County, which is the state's middle district, they said. Williams had yet to rule on that argument. The lawsuits were being heard at DeSantis' administration. Apparently was preparing to build a second immigration detention center at a Florida National Guard training center in North Florida. At least one contract has been awarded for what's labeled in state record as the North Detention Facility. So they've temporarily shut down the expansion of that, which they're trying to expand to house 3,000 people. But still, it's not going to shut it down, unfortunately. Meanwhile, there's been reports of abuse at these ICE facilities from pregnant women and children. I know you're shocked. A new report has uncovered hundreds of alleged human rights violations in U.S. immigration detention centers, including the abuse of pregnant women and children, compiled by the office of Senator Jon Ossoff. That's the Democratic senator out of Georgia. The report documents 510 credible cases of abuse since January 20th, 2025. That's interesting. You don't want to go back a little further than that. The findings detail a wide range of alleged violations, including deaths in custody, physical and sexual abuse, mistreatment of vulnerable populations, denial of medical care, overcrowding, unsanitary conditions, inadequate food and water, exposure to extreme temperatures, limited access to legal counsel, and family separations. Ossoff's office said its investigation is ongoing, but has accused the Department of Homeland Security of obstructing congressional oversight. According to the senator, DHS has restricted access to detention sites and blocked efforts to interview detainees. Under the second Trump administration, U.S. immigration arrests have surged dramatically, with the Guardian analysis showing a 268% increase in average daily arrests in June compared to the same month last year. Most of those most of those detained have no criminal convictions, and immigration detention centers are now overcrowded by more than 13,500 people. While concerns over inhumane conditions in U.S. detention centers predate Trump's return to office, the issue has escalated amid the administration's aggressive crackdown on undocumented communities, including long-term residents and individuals admitted under legal programs that Trump is now working to dismantle. The latest report from Senator Ossoff's office highlights serious human rights violations, including 41 cases of physical and or sexual abuse of detainees while in DHS custody. Some detainees also allegedly face retaliation for reporting mistreatment. Among the most disturbing examples, at least 4 emergency 911 calls reporting sexual assault at the South Texas ICE Processing Center since January. The report also detailed 14 credible cases of mistreatment of pregnant women in DHS custody. In one instance, a woman was told to drink water after requesting medical care. In another, a woman reportedly bled for days before being taken to a hospital where she was left alone in a room to miscarry without access to water or medical assistance. Additionally, the report cites 18 cases involving the mistreatment of children as young as 2, including U.S. citizens. One case involved a 10-year-old U.S. citizen recovering from brain surgery who was allegedly denied follow-up care. Another involved a 4-year-old child undergoing treatment for metastatic cancer, who was reportedly deported without seeing a doctor. First reported by NBC News, the findings come from Ossoff's office. In response, DHS Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin told NBC that any claim that there are subprime conditions at ICE detention centers are false, claiming that detainees receive proper meals and medical care and have access to legal counsel and family contact. Meredith Yoon, an immigration attorney and litigation director at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Atlanta, told NBC News she had met with the woman who miscarried, a 23-year-old Mexican national. According to Yoon, the woman described experiencing horrific and terrible conditions while in detention. She described overcrowding, people forced to sleep on the floor, limited access to food and medical care, abusive treatment by guards, poor communication about legal proceedings, and restricted contact with family and legal counsel, all of which DHS has denied. No, please. None of that stuff's happening. In a statement from his office, Senator Ossoff said, regardless of our views on immigration policy, the American people do not support the abuse of detainees and prisoners. It's more important than ever to shine a light on what's happening behind bars and barbed wire, especially, most shockingly, to children. Yeah. So, kids in cages, remember that? They're back, but now it's everybody in cages. And this one is this is our buddy Cowboy Kitty. You guys might know him. Trucker, good friend of the show, a supporter of the show as well, and a supporter of a lot of shows in this space too. Well, I believe this is his sister-in-law. So this kind of, the ICE treatment kind of hits close to home when it starts hitting your friends, right? So right now they have a GoFundMe for this lady here. This is a fundraiser for the legal defense of Natalia Vichikova. I hope I said her name right. She's been here 9 years legally and was currently in the process of applying for a green card, working and paying taxes as a box truck driver, taking care of her daughter. She has been taken into ICE custody after being illegally stopped over a registration that was not expired. So it's typical. They pull you over for any bullshit just to see if papers, please. All funds will go to her legal defense and to help her get her life back together after this is resolved. So their goal is $4,500. Right now they've raised $876. I know everybody's broke. If you can donate, the link is down below in the description. If you can't, at least share out the link and let's help her out, right? Cowboy Kitty's good people, and we know this ain't bullshit. So we really hope that, she gets out of that. And a lot of these people get out of this nightmare. But unfortunately, I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon on the broad scope, unless, once again, we come together, put our differences aside, and stop this bullshit ourselves. Because the government ain't going to do it. Trumpy sure as fuck ain't going to do it. He's probably going to escalate it. So, anything you can do to help, I appreciate that. So, like I said, the link is down below in the description, too. So the GOP really loves, they love gerrymandering, right? I mean, so do the Democrats, but the Republicans, that's their bread and butter. That's how they control shit. Not through elections per se, but is gerrymandering the districts so that a whole bunch of like-minded people will vote for you instead of somebody else, right? So in Texas, the Democrats there decided to vamoose so they couldn't form a quorum. And now the GOP is enlisting the FBI's help to track down Texas Democrats. Yeah. This is their priorities, folks. U.S. Senator John Cornyn announced yesterday that the Federal Bureau of Investigation has agreed to help track down Texas lawmakers who left the state in a bid to block a new congressional map rigged to favor Republicans, sparking fears of a potential standoff between various law enforcement agencies or even illegal arrests by the FBI. Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott and his allies in the state legislature are trying to force through the map for 2026 during a special session to appease President Donald Trump. After over 50 elected Democrats fled to Illinois, Massachusetts, and New York on Sunday, their GOP colleagues issued civil arrest warrants, and Cornyn sent a letter requesting federal assistance. This is a purely state matter, and he's enlisting the See, I'm proud to announce that Director Kash Patel has approved my request for the FBI. Of course he approved it, because he's fucking APAC-controlled piece of shit, to assist state and local law enforcement in locating runaway Texas House Democrats. Cornyn said in a Thursday statement, "I thank President Trump and Director Patel for supporting and swiftly acting on my call for the federal government to do some illegal shit. To hold these supposed lawmakers accountable for fleeing Texas. We cannot allow these rogue legislators to avoid their constitutional responsibility." The state constitution. This is not a federal issue. The Texas Tribune reported that a spokesperson for Cornyn declined to provide additional information about the specifics of the FBI's involvement, and the Bureau did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Responding in a statement, Christina Harvey, executive director of the progressive advocacy group Stand Up America, said that the idea that the FBI would be weaponized to hunt down democratically elected lawmakers because they are standing in the way of Trump's partisan political agenda should alarm every American. It's taking a page out of the authoritarian playbook to intimidate political opponents and force a vote on rigged electoral maps that would help MAGA Republicans cling to power, she added. We stand with the brave Democratic lawmakers who are putting everything on the line to resist this partisan power grab orchestrated by Trump and Governor Abbott, and we urge them to keep up the fight. Lisa Gilbert, co-president of the group Public Citizen, said that when politicians deploy federal law enforcement against state elected officials simply for opposing their agenda, they attack our system and put our American freedoms at risk. We stand with the patriotic legislators who are resisting this authoritarian overreach. This moment represents a deep-seated threat to our democracy as we know it. And there's cornbread Cornyn right there. Experts and elected officials, including Democratic Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, have emphasized that the FBI does not have the authority to enforce the civil warrants, and the Texas Democrats don't face any criminal ones. On Wednesday, News Not Noise's Jessica Yellen asked Pritzker about Cornyn's request to the FBI and Trump's comment that the agency may have to get involved. Well, they're grandstanding, the Illinois governor said. There literally is no federal law applicable to this situation. None. They can say that they're sending FBI. FBI agents might show up just to, I don't know, again, put on a show. But the fact is that, our local law enforcement protect everybody in Illinois, he continued. Our state troopers protect everybody in Illinois and anybody who's here in Illinois. And so, whether it's federal agents coming to Illinois or state rangers from Texas, if you haven't broken federal law, you're basically unwelcome. And there's no way that our state legislators here, the Texas state legislators, can be arrested. Pritzker also stretched that the entire series of events is really all about politics, explaining that Abbott is an avid follower of Trump, and Republican Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is challenging Cornyn for his Senate seat, so they're fighting, bickering over who can be tougher on this subject. The gerrymandering battle has also generated at least one major threat of violence. Early Wednesday, a hotel in the Chicago suburbs where some Texas Democrats are staying had to be evacuated due to a bomb threat. Local law enforcement searched the building before allowing guests to return. All members are safe, everything is fine, and we are charting the course forward, Kendall Scudder, chair of the Texas Democratic Party, said after the evacuation. It's going to take more than a couple of threats to try to scare Texas Democrats off of this course. It's essential to us and what we believe as Democrats that people deserve representation in our government, and we are moving full steam ahead. Reporting on Cornyn's Thursday statement about the FBI, the New York Times noted that several Democrats said that as of Thursday morning, no federal agents had been seen or reported at their hotel in St. Charles, Illinois. So, and this is the thing, this is the constant theme of Trump and his people. Let's push the envelope. Let's see how many laws we can break. And if we do break laws or something like that, or if it's good, we'll tie it up in court forever. I mean, I don't know what the Texas Democrats may not be on the same par as national Democrats, but like I said, they've used this tactic before, the Democrats have, to try and stop things in the Texas legislature that are just crazy. Like this redistricting, the redistricting map that is going, there needs to be a third party to review these maps. And even then you have to make damn sure that they're impartial. That's going to be a tough road to hoe, as they say. Where are we at here? Let me look at our thing. Okay. All right. So apparently there was a shooting over the last few days, and the Army has identified this soldier in the Fort Stewart shooting. The man suspected of shooting 5 of his fellow soldiers at Fort Stewart, Georgia on Wednesday morning has been identified as 28-year-old Army Sergeant Cornelius Radford. Service officials revealed at a press conference. Radford, an automated logistics sergeant assigned to the 2nd Brigade Combat Team, used a personal handgun to open fire on other troops before he was subdued by service members, according to Brigadier General John Lubis, commander of the 3rd Infantry Division. Soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, then allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody, Lubis told reporters. The incident, which took place in the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team area, caused a base-wide lockdown and lasted just more than an hour. Law enforcement agents were able to apprehend the shooter at 11:35 a.m. shortly after they were dispatched for a possible shooting at 10:56 a.m., officials said. The shooting injured Radford's co-workers, with 3 requiring surgery and 2 others transported to Memorial Hospital in Savannah for additional care. All 5 are in stable condition, expected to recover, according to Lubis. He noted that Radford was interviewed by the Army Criminal Investigation Division and is currently in pretrial confinement, awaiting a charging decision by the Office of the Special Trial Counsel. Military officials are now looking into the motives of Radford, which remain unknown, as well as how he was able to bring a personal weapon onto the base. Lubis said that despite the shooting, he is very confident in the security of this installation. Well, I wouldn't be that confident. We're still not certain about the motivation, but again, he's been interviewed by Army investigators, and we believe we'll gain more information here shortly, he said. CNN reported earlier Tuesday that Radford had previously been arrested for driving under the influence in May. but his chain of command did not know of the arrest until after the shooting. I do believe he was arrested locally for a DUI. That was unknown to his chain of command until the event occurred, and we started looking into the law enforcement databases, he told reporters. Lubis also said that he's not currently aware of any other disciplinary or behavioral problems with Radford. So, yeah. I had no idea that it actually happened. That there was a shooting on base. I'm interested to find out what his motives were. I mean, you're seeing some servicemen like lighting themselves on fire and stuff like that in protest of what's going on. I wish more people would pay attention to that kind of stuff. Meanwhile, the suspect in the murder of Israeli embassy staffers in the U.S. Indicated for hate crime, of course. A man accused of shooting dead 2 Israeli embassy staff members in Washington, D.C. has been indicted on federal hate crime and murder charges, as Trumpy suggested he may call on the National Guard to bring down crime rates in the U.S. state's capital. Yeah. So far, so good in L.A., right? Court documents filed in federal court in Washington and unsealed on Wednesday show that defendant Elias Rodriguez had been charged with 9 counts, including a hate crime resulting in death. The 30-year-old is accused of shooting dead Israeli embassy staffers Yaron Lishinsky and Sarah Milgram, a young couple who were about to become engaged as they left an event at the Capitol Jewish Museum in Washington in May. Rodriguez, who witnesses described as pacing outside the museum before the attack, approached the couple and opened fire. Surveillance footage then showed him advance on Lishinsky and Milgram as they fell to the ground, firing additional shots as he stood over them. Rodriguez appeared to reload before jogging off, according to officials. 2 other people were standing with the couple at the time of the attack, escaped unharmed. Rodriguez then entered the museum and confessed to the killings. He was heard shouting, "Free Palestine," as he was led away. Rodriguez also told police, "I did it for Palestine, I did it for Gaza," according to federal authorities, which makes me suspicious because no one would do that without like intentionally trying to tip that as something they were intentionally doing for Palestine. I don't think that's what, I don't know. I'm very hesitant to believe a lot of the stuff about this particular story, but you know, as to the motives, prosecutors described the killings as calculated and planned in court papers, alleging that Rodriguez flew to Washington from Chicago with a handgun in his checked luggage. Authorities also claimed Rodriguez purchased a ticket for the American Jewish Committee organized event at the museum 3 hours before it started. Rodriguez was previously charged with the murder of foreign officials and other crimes. Prosecutors added the hate crime charges after bringing the case to a grand jury. So what is going to be the result of that, right? Are they all going to be hate crimes now? Maybe. Meanwhile, Israel used U.S.-made bombs in attacks on Gaza schools, Human Rights Watch says. Wow, look at that, U.S.-made bombs. Shocking. I know, this is all shocking news. What's up, Vera? Good to see you. Bomb remnants found after Israeli airstrikes hit 2 different schools in Gaza were from U.S.-made munitions, according to a Human Rights Watch report released yesterday. The munitions were used when Israeli forces carried out at least 3 airstrikes on the Khadija Girls' School in Deir al-Balah on July 27th, 2024, killing at least 15 people, and Al-Zaytun C School in Gaza City on September 21st last year, we killed at least 34 people, according to Human Rights Watch. HRW concluded that at least 2 airdropped GBU-39 small-diameter bombs used in the attack on the Khadija Girls' School were produced by Boeing and then transferred to Israel with U.S. government approval under the Foreign Ministry sales or direct commercial sales programs. Around 4,000 displaced Palestinians had been sheltering at the Khadija Girls' School for months, according to the Palestinian Civil Defense, an organization providing emergency and rescue services in Gaza. There was also a field hospital connected to the Khadija Girls' School, according to testimony from the director of Al-Aqsa Martyrs Hospital in Deir al-Balah, which is located a kilometer away from the school. HRW's report found no clear reason for military strikes on or near the school on the day of the attack. It said there was no evidence that any of the men killed at the school were members of Palestinian armed groups after reviewing social media pages of groups. HRW contacted the Israeli military for more information about the target, but did not receive a response. Surprise, surprise. Civilians were not warned that the first strike was coming on the girls' school, which is when most casualties occurred, but were apparently warned about the second and third strikes. 4 children, 4 women, 7 men, and 2 others whose complete names were not identified were found to be among those who died in the attacks, according to Air Wars, a non-governmental organization that investigates civilian harm in conflict zones. The Gaza Health Ministry reported at the time that 30 had been killed and 100 were injured in the attacks. HRW's report stressed that there is an absence of safe places left for Gaza's displaced people after hundreds of Israeli strikes on schools sheltering displaced Palestinians, including unlawfully indiscriminate attacks using U.S. munitions. Recent Israeli strikes on schools turned shelters are part of Israeli forces' current military offensive that is demolishing much of Gaza's remaining civilian infrastructure, displacing again hundreds of thousands of Palestinians and worsening the already dire humanitarian situation, the report says. HRW called on the U.S. to impose an arms embargo on the Israeli government and take further measures to enforce the United Nations Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, which they will not do. In a separate investigation of an attack on the Al-Zitoun C school in Gaza City on September 21st, 2024, HRW found that at least one U.S.-produced GBU-39 small-diameter bomb directly hit one of the school buildings, killing at least 34 people. Gaza's Ministry of Health and the Gaza Media Office had reported at the time that 22 people were killed, including 6 women and 13 children. 3 men, 4 women, and 16 children, 23 people spanning 9 families were identified among the victims, according to Air Wars, which used open-source information to establish who had been killed. HRW identified and found the names of 4 additional people who were killed, including 1 woman, 2 boys, and 1 female of an unknown age. Once again, HRW found no evidence of a military target in the school or the surrounding area where thousands of people were said to be sheltering, according to the Palestinian Civil Defense in Gaza. Many of the victims were said to be widows and orphans. The Israeli military said it had conducted a precise strike on terrorists who were operating inside a Hamas command and control center embedded inside a compound that previously served as the Al-Falah school. But HRW did not find any evidence that the men who died had any ties to armed groups. Bombing schools during armed conflict is considered a war crime under international law, and morally too. When asked by Middle East Eye whether a U.S. investigation would be conducted over the use of U.S. munitions in Israel's attacks on the schools, the State Department laughed and said, "What? I'm not doing that shit." The State Department said it rejected the conclusions identified in the HRW report, saying that the human rights organization has long been hostile towards Israel. Gee, I wonder why. It said that it stood with Israel and that the Israeli government is investigating incidents in Gaza involving civilians. It referred MEE to the Israeli government for more bullshit. It also added that Israel had the near impossible task of fighting on multiple fronts against those that want to destroy them, including in Gaza, where Hamas cowards hide behind hospitals, schools, and other civilian infrastructure, adding that this is the reason why Trumpian Marco Aquaman will make sure Hamas never rules Gaza again. These are the same people who put their weapons in their own residential areas so that no one will bomb them. They use their own people as human shields. HRW's investigation found no evidence of any military activity at the schools or any connections between the victims and Hamas. The Department of Defense did not respond to a request for comment by the time of publication. So all these fuckers are lying to you about this war. Israel does not have the right to defend itself when defending yourself means genocide. Sorry, not sorry at all. So these GHF aid sites in Gaza, which are basically death traps, well, guess pill popper Huckabee wants more of those as U.S. to support 12 more GHF aid sites in Gaza. 12 more death traps. Pardon me. U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee said on Wednesday that a controversial American contracting firm tasked with delivering aid in Gaza is expanding operations from the 4 hubs it is currently operating to 16. Israeli forces have killed more than 1,000 Palestinians at or near aid centers run by the U.S. and Israel-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, that would be the GHF, leading to humanitarian organizations and 21 U.S. senators to call on the GHF to cease operations. The immediate plan is to scale up the number of sites to 16 and begin to operate them as much as 24 hours a day to get more food and more bullets into people. For more food to more people more efficiently, Huckabee propagated. He did not directly confirm or deny Axios reporting on Tuesday that President Trump will take over aid distribution in Gaza. When asked about that reporting, he said during an interview on Fox News that the Trump administration stood up GHF in the first place. I think the President of the United States always has a very important role in something like this, if he chooses to do it, Huckabee said, calling GHF an American-based operation. No, it's American-based, all right, but trained by the IDF. GHF's aid hubs are managed and secured by armed American private contractors, operating with little guidance dictating their activities in the Gaza Strip. Witnesses charge that contractors have used dangerous crowd control tactics, including using live ammunition and tear gas, while a whistleblower says he saw contractors shoot at crowds of Palestinians seeking food and water at or near the aid hubs. If the new hubs proceed as Huckabee describes, many more American contractors would be necessary for their operations, which means many more murderers. Israeli and American officials say GHF is necessary to prevent Hamas from stealing from aid distribution efforts in the Gaza Strip, which is bullshit because it's actually their ISIS buddies that are stealing it. But the New York Times recently reported that the Israeli military does not have proof of Hamas doing this. GHF did not answer an RS inquiry about whether it was expanding its operations in the Gaza Strip. But RS, I guess, is responsible statecraft. Look at him. He looks like somebody put somebody's old granddaddy on some pills and then set him in front of the TV so he can watch his stories. Anyway, so yeah, more death traps for those poor people over there. And so in the, oh, wow, shocking news, you don't say, department, Israeli security cabinet chose starvation policy in Gaza over deal to free captives, according to a report. Shocking, I know. Hebrew media cited leaked documents showing that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu actively pursued a policy of starvation in a bid to bring about Hamas's surrender. The documents also show that Netanyahu refused to move forward with phase 2 of the last ceasefire deal, despite internal warnings urging him to secure a release of captives before returning to fighting. The documents confirmed that Netanyahu and the war cabinet instructed the army to stop all humanitarian aid and close the Rafah crossing in early March. The only chance to get hostages released is to discuss Phase B conditions. Major General Nitzan Alan, who is in charge of the captives issue, told ministers according to the meeting records. Shin Bet Chief Ronan Bar said, "My preferred option is to reach Phase B. We can resume the war afterward." Netanyahu refused and insisted the war would not end while Hamas remained in power. "If Hamas returns even a number of hostages, less than half, that's excellent," Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz was cited as saying. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich lashed out at ministers, saying, "You're misleading the public into thinking we can stop the war and return to it later. That's ignorance," according to the leaked documents. The report confirms that Hamas acted in good faith. We thought the talks would explode once we entered them, and that didn't happen, the document cite Israeli Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer as saying. However, Netanyahu rejected making a deal and bet on besieging and starving 2 million Palestinians in an effort to force Hamas to surrender. On March 18th, the war resumed with intensity, collapsing the ceasefire and negotiations. The report definitively proves that what we've been saying for a year and a half, a comprehensive deal to bring all captives home, was possible, said the Israeli Hostages and Missing Families Forum. Months later, the Gaza Strip is now facing a widespread and unprecedented famine. Dozens of people, including children, have died from starvation in recent weeks as Palestinians continue to be gunned down by soldiers while receiving minimal amounts of aid via CashApp. Ceasefire talks collapsed recently after Israel withdrew from the negotiations over disagreements about withdrawal from Gaza and ending the war. Despite numerous internal warnings about the danger to Israeli captives, the government is now moving ahead with plans for a full takeover and occupation of new areas in the Strip, including Gaza City and central Gaza. The plan is reportedly aimed at destroying Hamas's capabilities and pressuring it to release the 50 captives it still holds. It would begin with taking over Gaza City and refugee camps in the central Strip, displacing around half of the population southward towards the Mawasi area where hundreds of thousands of displaced Palestinians already reside. It's expected to be approved at a security cabinet meeting sometime today. So, yeah, Israel chose starvation. Yeah, of course they did. That's what they choose every day, right? Israeli forces killed 98 Palestinians in Gaza over 24 hours. It's the same headline, and the numbers are about the same too, but it's a different day. Gaza's health ministry said yesterday that Israeli forces killed 98 Palestinians and wounded 603 over the previous 24 hours as the IDF continues to kill desperate people seeking aid and launch airstrikes across the Strip. The health ministry said that the bodies of 2 other Palestinians killed in previous Israeli attacks were also recovered. A number of victims are still under the rubble and on the streets where ambulance and civil defense crews are unable to reach them at this time, the ministry wrote on Telegram. The majority of the dead, 51, were massacred by the IDF while attempting to get aid, and another 230 aid seekers were injured. The health ministry said that since the U.S.-backed Gaza humanitarian CashApp began operating at the end of May, it has recorded the death of 1,706 Palestinians and the injury of over 12,000. According to the AP, at least 13 Palestinians were killed while attempting to reach aid trucks in the Marag corridor, a strip of land between Rafah and Khan Yunis that's controlled by the Israeli military. At least 2 others were killed near CashApp sites. The Palestinian news agency Wafa reported on Thursday that an overnight Israeli strike on an apartment in the Nusrat refugee camp in central Gaza killed 4 people, including 2 girls. At least 7 people were killed by Israeli strikes on different parts of Gaza City yesterday. On top of the violent deaths, Palestinians continue to starve to death due to the U.S.-backed Israeli siege that they totally planned for. The health ministry said that Gaza hospitals recorded a total of 4 malnutrition deaths over 24 hours. And there's the official results, but we all know that those numbers are far more than what's being reported because of who's missing under the rubble, that, who's been snatched up, that sort of thing. Meanwhile, Netanyahu confirms he plans full Israeli takeover of the Gaza Strip. We told you about this on Tuesday. So Bibi confirmed in public comments yesterday that his goal for Israel's next military offensive in Gaza is the takeover and full Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territory. Bibi claimed that he doesn't want to keep Gaza and that Israel would hand over the territory to an unspecified Arab force. But the Israeli military plans involve the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian civilian population of Gaza City and Gaza Central refugee camps with the goal of driving them out of the Strip entirely. We intend to control all of Gaza. We don't want to keep Gaza. We want a security perimeter. We want to hand Gaza over to some schmucks that will do our bidding. To Arab forces that will govern Gaza properly, Bibi told his buddies at Fox News. In another interview, Netanyahu said Hamas and the Palestinian Authority couldn't govern Gaza, and that the Israeli military would be responsible for overall security, meaning Israel would maintain a tight grip on the territory. We don't want to keep it, but we want to keep it. We will never hand Gaza over to the Palestinian Authority or Hamas. We will provide overall security. There will be a security perimeter provided by us. Bibi's plan has faced resistance from the military since heavy Israeli troop casualties are expected, and the Israeli captives in Gaza will likely be harmed or killed during the offensive. Thousands of Israelis are protesting against the planned escalation, and the families of the hostages are calling for a diplomatic deal to free their relatives. Despite the risks and the daily slaughter and starvation in Gaza, the Trump administration has decided to back whatever Bibi decides to do. Trumpy has decided not to intervene and to let the Israeli government make its own decisions. Axios reported on Thursday. That's from Dave DeCamp over there at antiwar.com. Be sure you're checking them out. Lots of good news aggregation over there for you, plus their own journalism. Keep them in mind and help them out too. There's UN calls for immediate halt of Israel's plan to take over Gaza. It's just all well and good, but, when you have the United States with veto power, the UN is really just kind of hamstrung. But they can continue to complain. They can do that. That's what I would do. If you're going to keep vetoing, I'll tell the people why. Yemen is picking up the pace as Yemen sanctions 64 companies over Red Sea blockade violations. The Humanitarian Coordination Center in Yemen announced on Wednesday evening that 64 companies have been sanctioned and their vessels banned from sailing through the Red Sea, the Arabian Sea, the Bab al-Mandab Strait, and the Gulf of Aden. The sanctions come in response to violations of a Yemeni armed forces decision to block the transit of ships linked to Israel or traveling to occupied Palestinian ports. In a statement carried by Yemeni news agency Saba, the center confirmed Yemen had imposed sanctions on 64 companies that violated the naval blockade imposed on the Israeli enemy. The statement added that since the blockade began, the center contacted the ship-owning companies to inform them of the restrictions. Despite receiving prior warnings, these vessels proceeded to enter ports in occupied Palestine, prompting the imposition of sanctions. Don't fuck with the Houthis, man. They're like, you don't go there, you don't go there. Otherwise, the center held the responsible companies fully accountable for the consequences resulting from these sanctions, affirming that sanctions will continue to be imposed on companies that violated the naval blockade, regardless of their nationalities. The Humanitarian Coordination Center explained that the goal of the sanctions is to pressure the Israeli entity to halt its aggression and lift the blockade on the Gaza Strip, further noting that shipping companies have already begun cutting ties with the sanctioned firms and are excluding Israel from their commercial operations. Last Sunday, the YAF announced the start of the fourth escalation phase in the ongoing naval blockade against Israel. The new stage comes as part of what the forces described as continued field escalation in support of Gaza. Brigadier General Yahya Suri, the spokesperson for the Yemeni armed forces, lovingly known as the Houthis, stated that the latest phase includes targeting all ships whose owning companies deal with the ports of the occupied Palestinian territories, urging those companies to halt such activities effective immediately. Houthis said, out! Let's get that shot out of here. Good on the Houthis, too. Good on Yemen, right? A battered country, practically destroyed by civil war thanks to the United States. And still, they're helping their buddies. It makes the rest of us look kind of pathetic. Meanwhile, in Syria, nearly 10,000 killed in Syria since diversity-friendly jihadists, the DIE jihadists, or the DEI jihadists, seized power. There's a fun story about some mechanic or something. He sold his truck. The truck got auctioned off, and somehow it ended up like in Afghanistan. And you could see like his information on the side and stuff. They were supposed to take his lettering off. They didn't do it. So here are these guys driving around in this plumbing truck with like guns on the back. It's kind of wild. The UK-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, the SOHR or SOR, has documented the violent deaths of nearly 10,000 people in Syria since the former ISIS commander Ahmad al-Sharaa was installed in power in Damascus. After Sharaa toppled the government of former Syrian President Bashar al-Assad in December last year, he was widely praised. An article in the UK's Telegraph described his armed group, the former al-Qaeda-affiliated HTS, as diversity-friendly jihadists. Wonder if any of them worked on any of those new Star Trek shows. Since that time, his HTS-led security forces have gone on a killing spree targeting Syria's minority groups. SOR reported on August 7th that due to ongoing violence and violations by local and foreign actors, coupled with widespread security chaos, at least 9,889 people have been killed since December 8th of last year, the day Damascus fell. The SORH said that 7,449 civilians were among the victims, including 396 children and 541 women. It also stressed that there has been no accountability for killings carried out by members of Syria's security forces and affiliated armed factions, while in some cases perpetrators are being covered up and facts are being distorted. The SOHR noted, for example, that the fact-finding committee formed to investigate the massacre of roughly 1,600 Alawite civilians in Syria's coastal regions in March did not provide results consistent with the facts. Basically, it was bullshit, and was released while government forces and affiliated factions were carrying out new massacres of Druze civilians in Suwaida. At the same time, pro-government media have launched campaigns aimed at undermining any group seeking to document or expose the human rights violations, including by disseminating sectarian and inflammatory rhetoric against specific religious minority groups. For example, media campaigns have been launched to deflect from the massacres by calling Alawites remnants of the regime of Bashar al-Assad, calling the Druze collaborators with Israel, and calling the Kurds separatists. In many videos posted online, Syrian government-affiliated fighters regularly referred to both Alawites and Druze as pigs before executing them in their homes and the street. The SOHR stated as well that thousands of detainees who have not had a proper trial or been allowed to appear before a judge remain in prison. Wow, that sounds like Alligator Alcatraz or Guantanamo Bay. Among the detainees are people arrested after the fall of Assad and others who were arrested during raids or at security checkpoints. Many of these detainees have no clear charges against them and are being arbitrarily detained without due process, SOHR added. On August 5th, SOHR reported that families of kidnapped civilians renewed calls for Syrian authorities to reveal the fate of young Alawite men taken from their homes without charges during the massacres on the coast in March. The missing detainees are from the villages of Hamaiman, Bustan al-Basha, al-Kabo, and al-Sanobar. Families told SOHR activists that armed groups stormed houses and took the young men to an unknown location without explaining the reasons or issuing official arrest warrants. That sounds like ICE. Since then, Syrian authorities have provided no information about their fate despite repeated demands from their families. So, yeah, we knew Syria was going to be pretty fucked up for sure after all. The same thing happened in Libya. Same thing happened in Iraq, right? Total breakdown. And, of course, Israel's trying to get a piece of the action. The U.S. too. Russia too. They still have bases there. So, yeah, it's that's a situation we'll definitely have to keep an eye on. India and a lot of the Far East and even the subcontinent there are getting hammered by the environment, right? Shit out of human rights. That's what SOHR is. So India is using helicopters to rescue people stranded by floods on key pilgrim route. Indian rescuers used helicopters on Thursday to pluck to safety people stranded by floodwaters in the Himalayan state of Uttarakhand, 2 days after a sudden inundation and landslide killed 4 people, while more than a dozen were still missing. With roads cleared as rain eased, rescue teams arrived in Darali, where Tuesday's wall of water had submerged ensludged homes and cars in the village on the way to the Hindu pilgrim town of Gangotri. Helicopters were carrying to safety those who had been stranded, the state's chief minister, Pushkar Singh Dhami, said in a post on the tweeters, adding, the heli rescue operation started in the affected areas this morning. Authorities said about 400 people stuck in Gangotri were being rescued by air, with 9 Army personnel and 7 civilians among the missing. But communication links with rescuers and residents remain disrupted as mobile telephone and electricity towers swept away by the floods have yet to be replaced. We were stuck in the slush for about 20 minutes and were then rescued by the Indian Army, said Amardeep Singh, an Army contractor on a rescue mission, when his team was hit by another flash flood in Harsal, the site of an Army camp. Earlier, Army rescuers used their hands as well as machinery to shift boulders from roads turned into muddy, gushing rivers. Visuals showed more than 225 Army personnel were drafted into the rescue, its Northern Command said on the tweeters. We saw Darali falling before our eyes, said Anamika Mehra, a pilgrim headed for Gangotri when the flooding hit. The hamlet of about 200 people in the state's Uttarkashi district stands more than 3,775 feet above sea level on the climb to the temple town. We were very scared, but the locals helped us, and the Army reached the next day to rescue us, Mehra told news agency ANI. Uttarakhand is prone to floods and landslides, which some experts blame on climate change. In 2021, a flash flood swept away 2 hydroelectric projects to send water, rocks, and debris into a valley, killing more than 200 in an event scientists said could have been unleashed by a large avalanche of glacier ice. Yeah, that's another thing, too, is the global warming. You're going to start seeing a lot more of these flash floods in areas like that, where you have glaciers that are melting rapidly. And when it's not so much as the ice itself melting, it's like certain like ice bridges and stuff that keep the glacier in place. When those fail, then you start seeing the rock, everything start coming down. And it's crazy time. So, and in China, at least 10 dead, 33 missing in flash floods in the Gansu province. That's just scary looking. Anytime I see floodwaters anywhere, it's just, you don't know what's under the water. At least 10 people have been killed and 33 are missing in flash floods in northwestern China's Gansu province, according to state media. From August 7th, continuous heavy rain has triggered flash floods. As of 3:30 p.m. local time on August 8th, 10 people have died and 33 are missing, state broadcaster CCTV reported Friday. That would be today. Chinese President Xi Jinping ordered all-out rescue operations with utmost effort to save the missing people. Due to the frequent occurrences of extreme weather, Xi ordered all regions to resolutely overcome complacency and strengthen efforts to identify risks, the broadcaster added. Footage shared by Chinese fire authorities on the social media platform Weibo showed rescuers guiding people through rushing gray water in a village. Photos posted by Gansu's government showed roads covered in silt and large stones. Record rainfall has lashed China's north and south in recent weeks in what meteorologists describe as extreme weather linked to climate change. Heavy rains and flooding have killed at least 60 people across northern China, including Beijing, since late July, so only in the last few weeks. Guess what? Third hottest July on record, wreaking climate havoc. Oh, that's a nice little, it's a little fountain they're filling their water bottles up. That's nice. in Rome. The third hottest July worldwide ended a string of record-breaking temperatures, but many regions were devastated by extreme weather amplified by global warming, the European Climate Monitoring Service said yesterday. As we told you, heavy rains flooded northern China and Pakistan. Canada, Scotland, and Greece struggled to tame wildfires intensified by persistent drought. We're dealing with a little bit with the smoke from the Canadian fires. And many nations in Asia and Scandinavia recorded new average highs for the month. We was telling you about this the other day, that Norway and Japan getting like 107 degrees, and Norway getting above average heat temperatures too. 2 years after the hottest July on record, the recent streak of global temperature records is over. Carla Bontempo, director of the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service, said in a statement, but that does not mean climate change has stopped. We continue to witness the effects of a warming world. As in June, July showed a slight dip compared to the preceding 2 years, averaging 1.25 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial era, which was 1850 to 1900. 2023 and 24 warmed above the benchmark by more than 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is the Paris Agreement target set in 2015 for capping the rise in global temperatures at relatively safe levels. Good luck with that. That deceptively small increase has been enough to make storms, heat waves, and other extreme weather events far more deadly and destructive. We continue to witness the effect of a warming world in events such as extreme heat waves and catastrophic floods in July, Bontempo said. Last month, temperatures exceeded 50 degrees Celsius in the Gulf, Iraq, and for the first time, Turkey, while torrential rains killed hundreds of people in China and Pakistan. In Spain, more than 1,000 deaths were attributed by a public institute to the heat in July, half as many as in the same period as 2024. The main source of the CO2 driving up temperatures is well known, the burning of oil, coal, and gas to generate energy, but also natural earth processes as well. I don't think this is a one or the other thing. I think both of these things are driving climate change. And we need to recognize that, too, that some of this natural stuff ain't natural, or at least not regular. Unless we rapidly stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere, we should expect not only new temperature records, but also a worsening of impacts. Global average temperatures are calculated using billions of satellite and weather readings, both on land and at sea, and the data used by Copernicus extends back to 1940. Even if July was milder in some places than in previous years, 11 countries experienced their hottest July in at least half a century, including China, Japan, North Korea, Tajikistan, Bhutan, Brunei, and Malaysia, according to AFP calculations. In Europe, Nordic countries saw an unprecedented string of hot days, including more than 20 days above 30 degrees Celsius across Finland. More than half of the land in Europe and along the Mediterranean basin experienced the worst drought conditions in the first 3 weeks of July since monitoring began in 2012, according to an AFP analysis of data from the European Drought Observatory. In contrast, temperatures were below normal in North and South America, India, and parts of Australia and Africa, as well as in Antarctica. Still hot here, though. Still pretty fucking hot. Last month was also the third hottest July on record for sea surface temperatures. Locally, however, several ocean records for July were broken in the Norwegian Sea and parts of the North Sea in the North Atlantic west of France and Britain. The extent of Arctic sea ice was 10% below average, the second lowest for July in 47 years of satellite observations, virtually tied with the readings of 2012 and 2021. Diminishing sea ice is a concern not only because it adds to sea levels, but because it replaces the snow and ice that reflect almost all the sun's energy back into space with the deep blue ocean, which absorbs it. The oceans absorb 90% of the excess heat generated by global warming. In Antarctica, sea ice extent is the third lowest on record for this month. Right? So, yeah, so the ice melts. And with an accumulative amount of ice that melts, yes, it's going to raise sea levels. But when it's not reflecting that sunlight back into space, it means it's absorbing it. And it means it's heating up the planet more, right? And this has happened before in the past, before before there were factories and stuff like that. That's just the cycle of the earth. But the fact that pushing extra CO2 into the mix, we ain't helping things. Human activities are causing the world to warm at an unprecedented rate. Pierce Forster, director of the Priestley Center for Climate Futures at the University of Leeds, told AFP in commenting on the new data. On top of the human-driven warming, he explained there are year-to-year changes caused by natural phenomena such as the El Nino, a shift in wind patterns across the southern Pacific, and volcanic activity that help push global temperatures past the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold over the last 2 years. These variations are now dropping us back from the record-breaking temperatures, said Forster, who heads a consortium of 60 top scientists that track core changes in Earth's climate system. But the reprieve is only temporary, he added. We can expect the high records to be broken again in the near future. Yeah, so it's just like, you're going to have a hot summer, and then the next couple of summers after that won't be as bad, and then boom, you'll have another hot summer, even hotter than this one. So, finally, in our news block, is it? Okay, yes. So, August 6th, that would have been Wednesday, was the 80th anniversary of the United States dropping the A-bomb on Hiroshima. And tomorrow, I believe, will be the anniversary of Nagasaki. So it's bomb weekend in Japan, and they do this every year. Hiroshima warns against nuclear weapons as it marks 80 years since the A-bomb. Exactly 80 years since an atomic bomb was used in war for the first time, thousands bowed their heads in prayer in Hiroshima on Wednesday as the city's mayor warned world leaders about the nuclear warheads that still exist today. The western Japanese city of Hiroshima was leveled on August 6, 1945, when the United States dropped a uranium bomb nicknamed Little Boy, killing about 78,000 people instantly. Hiroshima was the headquarters of some military units and a major supply base during World War II. U.S. war planners calculated that the surrounding mountains would concentrate the force of the bomb and enhance its destructiveness. Jesus. Little Boy unleashed a surge of heat reaching 4,000 degrees Celsius or 7,200 degrees Fahrenheit, and radiation that killed tens of thousands more by the end of the year. It was followed by a plutonium bomb on Nagasaki 3 days later, and Japan's surrender on August 15th. Representatives from a record 120 countries and territories, including nuclear superpower the United States and Israel, which neither confirms nor denies having nuclear weaponry, they got it, attended the annual ceremony at the Hiroshima Peace Memorial Park for the milestone year. At a moment of silence observed at 8:15 a.m., the exact time of the blast, Mayor Kazumi Matsui called on leaders to heed the lessons of Hiroshima, or Hiroshima, I like saying both, and Nagasaki, and warned of the consequences of the global trend towards a military buildup. Among the world's political leaders, there is a growing belief that possessing nuclear weapons is unavoidable in order to protect their own countries, he said, noting that the U.S. and Russia possess 90% of the world's nuclear warheads. And that's why North Korea has a nuclear warhead, because they know if they have one, they won't be invaded. The situation not only nullifies the lessons the international community has learned from the tragic history of the past, but also seriously undermines the frameworks that have been built for peace building. To all the leaders around the world, please visit Hiroshima and witness for yourself the reality of the atomic bombing. Yoshikazu Hori, a 71-year-old tourist, expressed a similar sentiment. It feels more and more like history is repeating itself. Terrible things are happening in Europe, even in Japan, in Asia. It's going the same way. It's very scary, he said. I've got grandchildren and I want peace so they can live their lives happily. In the decades following the attacks, those who survived, called hibakusha, often faced discrimination as rumors spread that they carried diseases and their offspring could be tainted. Their numbers fell below 100,000 for the first time this year. Japan, the only country to have suffered nuclear attacks, has stated its commitment to nuclear disarmament, but is not a signatory or observer of the UN treaty to ban nuclear weapons. You would think they would be, but they are not. So yeah, there it is. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, 80 years later. And I don't think it's the nukes we have to worry about. I think it's the deterioration of society as a whole that we're seeing now. And then the nukes might actually be something happy later, to end our misery. Wait, did I already do this? I did do this. Why is that there twice? That's not good. Okay. Well, guess what? Guess who's helping Israel spy on millions of Palestinians? Bum, 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 bum. It might be Microsoft.
The sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media publishing things that are true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members are using their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
All right, Microsoft helping Israel spy on millions of Palestinians since 2021. What's up, Bella? Good morning, good afternoon to you, wherever the case may be. Oh, that little Jewish factor. See, you got all this blue. They say, oh, that's just part of the building. No, it's not. Israel has been using a Microsoft cloud platform to store massive amounts of data and intelligence on Palestinians in both the occupied West Bank and Gaza, according to a new investigation carried out by 972 Magazine, Local Call, and The Guardian. The investigation reveals that Microsoft's chief executive met in 2021 with the commander of Israel's notorious Unit 8200, the military intelligence unit involved in the pager terror attacks against Lebanon and other covert operations across the region. Unit 8200 Chief Yossi Serial convinced Microsoft's Satya Nadella to grant Israeli military intelligence access to a customized and segregated area inside the Azure cloud platform, according to The Guardian. It then began building a sweeping and intrusive system that collects and stores recordings of millions of phone calls made each day by Palestinians in Gaza and the West Bank. Microsoft says its chief executive was unaware of what data would be stored on the platform. I didn't know. Me not know. Yet the report cites a cache of leaked Microsoft documents and interviews with nearly a dozen employees of the company and of Unit 8200, revealing the storage of everyday communications and data on the daily lives of regular Palestinian civilians. 3 Unit 8200 sources said the platform helped pave the way for many deadly airstrikes in Gaza and Israeli army operations in the occupied West Bank. Other sources say Tel Aviv needed Microsoft due to a lack of storage space and computing power to carry out its espionage plans. Israel hoped to intercept, record, and store 1 million calls an hour, according to intelligence sources. The system was designed to be placed on Microsoft servers under layers of security developed by the company with directives from Unit 8200. According to the leaked documents, droves of sensitive information are inside the company's data centers in Ireland and the Netherlands. The Guardian reported earlier this year that Israel relied on Microsoft tech for its genocidal campaign against Gaza. Ooh, excuse me. A little Foster Brooks thing going on there. An internal review carried out by the company claimed no evidence that its AI systems or cloud platforms were used for harm. Oh, no evidence. An internal review. We investigated ourselves. Oopsie, nothing here. The company had held conversations with Israeli defense officials and stipulated how its technology should be used in Gaza, insisting Microsoft systems must not be employed for the identification of targets for lethal strikes, a company source told The Guardian this week. Unit 8200 sources confirmed, however, that intelligence drawn from the enormous repositories of phone calls held in Azure had been used to research and identify bombing targets in Gaza. Thank you, Peace Dove. Catching the Foster Brooks. the Foster Brooks reference. I always like when somebody catches the reference. Nice. When planning an airstrike on an individual located within densely populated areas where high numbers of civilians are present, officers would use the cloud-based system to examine calls made by people in the immediate vicinity, they added. Israel has relied heavily on Western tech firms for mass surveillance and attacks on Palestinians. In March, 972 magazine and Local Call revealed that Unit 8200 developed a chat GPT-like tool programmed to compile massive collections of intercepted Palestinian communications. The tool was trained to understand colloquial Arabic and uses large amounts of Palestinian phone calls and text messages obtained through surveillance. The IDF has become increasingly dependent on the likes of Microsoft, Amazon, and Google to store and analyze greater volumes of data and intelligence information for longer periods, Israeli sources told The Guardian in January this year. Advanced facial recognition technology has also played a leading role in the forced disappearance and abduction of scores of Palestinians in Gaza by Israel. Earlier this year, Google announced plans to acquire the Israeli cloud security startup Wiz in a $32 billion deal. The Israeli startup was founded by and consists of members of Unit 8200. Last year, Google fired dozens of employees after they staged a series of sit-in protests across the U.S. to oppose Project Nimbus, which aims to provide the Israeli army with advanced AI and cloud services. So are you shocked? Are you really shocked? I don't think you are. Nobody's really shocked that these giant corporations are helping people with genocide. What? That sounds so crazy, yet it's so real. So real. It's for reals, B. So what do you do when you're on vacation from government, right? You didn't do anything while you're in there. At least you didn't do anything positive. Now you want to kick back and relax. Well, maybe you want to hit the beach, maybe you want to go up to the mountains to get away from them all. Or you could go to Israel and hang out with Bibi. As Bibi hosts 20 AIPAC-sponsored House Republicans in Israel. Oh, there they are. Look at all those ass-eating motherfuckers. Look at them. Look at them. They're like, more shit to eat, please. Please. Bibi said on Wednesday he hosted a delegation of House Republicans who were in Israel on a trip organized by the pro-Israel lobby group AIPAC. It was an AIPAC field trip, as members of Congress are flocking to the country amid their August recess. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu yesterday evening met with an AIPAC-organized delegation of Republican members of the U.S. Congress. Netanyahu's office said in a statement, the Prime Minister briefed the members of Congress on the war in the Gaza Strip and commented on the issue of the humanitarian assistance and the mendacious campaign being waged by Hamas against the state of Israel. Mendacious. AIPAC Tracker, a group that tracks donations to U.S. lawmakers from pro-Israel lobby groups, identified 20 House GOP members from a picture posted online by Netanyahu's office. I believe it's this picture right there. U.S. House Speaker Mike Johnson is also in Israel this week and visited illegal Jewish settlements in the Israeli-occupied West Bank, including one where he dined with Netanyahu. Where is he? Where's that fucker? Is he in this picture? He's got to be someone. This guy, he said, don't forget me. Don't forget me. He's got some chicks in the back. You always got to have the cool kids you always got to take the back seat. According to Punchbowl News, about 20 House Democrats are also headed to Israel during the recess on an AIPAC-sponsored trip. The strong show of support for Israel from so many U.S. lawmakers comes as Israel is regularly massacring over 100 Palestinians a day in Gaza, including many desperate people seeking aid, and Palestinians are starving to death in Gaza every day due to the U.S.-backed Israeli blockade. Here we go. The 20 House GOP members identified in the photo with Bibi include House Majority Whip Tom Emmer from Minnesota, Harriet Hageman from Wyoming, Michael Baumgartner from Washington, Julie Federchak from North Dakota, Jeff Hurd from Colorado, Craig Goldman out of Texas, Josh Bretschin out of Oklahoma, Randy Fine of Florida, Marlon Stutzman, Indiana, Brandon Gill, Texas, Abe Hamada, Arizona. Norton, I want you to come down here. Hamada. Derek Schmidt from Kansas, John McGuire of Virginia, Mark Harris, North Carolina, Brian Jack out of Georgia, Guy Rechtenthaler out of Pennsylvania. That's an interesting name. Troy Downing from Montana, Tony Weed from Wisconsin, or Wide, Bob Onder from Missouri, and Jeff Shreve from Indiana. Johnson is leading a smaller delegation that includes Michael McCall from Texas, Nathaniel Moran from Texas, Michael Cloud from Texas, and Claudia Tenney from New York. According to Punchbowl, the Democrat delegation will be led by House Democrat Caucus Chair Pete Aguilar and Representative Steny Hoyer. Yes, those most loved people inside the Democratic Party. So don't forget the Democrats are coming too. They got to suck that dick too. Arkansas governor and daughter of current ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, is also visiting Israel and joined Johnson in his visit to suck dick. So there you go. I'm sure there are others who wish they could have been there. To the moon, Alice. Do you remember the Eddie Murphy bit though about the honeymoon? Like, Norton, I want you to come down here. Okay, Ruffy. Meanwhile, the ultra-Orthodox media declares war in Israel over mandatory conscription of the Haredim. This guy said, fuck that. Newspapers representing Israel's ultra-Orthodox parties declared an ideological war yesterday against the Israeli military for its efforts to enforce draft orders for Haredi men. Yedid Neiman's front page said simply war, and Ha-Directs read a war for God, while saying Israel's ultra-Orthodox Jews were prepared for a fierce struggle. Germany has halted all military shipments to Israel. Yeah, I saw something like that. We'll see how long that lasts. Haredi men in Israel have long enjoyed de facto exemptions from serving in the Israeli military, allowing them to study in Jewish religious seminaries known as yeshivas instead. However, the Israeli military has begun to draft Haredi men in an effort to alleviate manpower shortages. Israeli needs additional soldiers as military operations to effect the genocide of Palestinians in Gaza have now dragged on for almost 2 years, putting a strain on its largely reservist-based army. The ideological war was announced after 2 yeshiva students were arrested on Wednesday for evading the draft. Following the arrest, a spokesman for Rabbi Dov Lando, a spiritual leader for the United Torah Judaism Party's Degel HaTorah faction, said Israel had declared war on yeshiva students. Hamavasar newspaper railed against the conscription decree, saying the enemies of the Jewish people are rising up to destroy us. Ultra-Orthodox Jewish men have enjoyed draft exemptions for decades. However, the High Court of Justice struck down the exemptions last year, allowing the army to begin sending out and enforcing draft orders. In response, the Shas and United Torah Judaism parties are seeking to pass legislation legalizing the de facto military draft exemptions. The Haredi effort to avoid fighting in Gaza has angered members of Israel's opposition parties. An update for the readers of Yetid Neiman, there is indeed a war in Israel, but it is in a different place and people are actually being killed in it, said opposition leader Yair Lapid in a post on Tweeters. Knesset member Oded Forer from the Yisrael Betenu party called the newspaper headlines a desecration of God's name. He quoted a verse from the biblical book of Numbers, which reads, "Shall your brothers go to war while you sit here?" As many as 80,000 ultra-Orthodox men aged 18 to 24 have failed to register for the draft. At the same time, the Israeli military says it needs 12,000 new soldiers to continue the war in Gaza. Haredi leaders say military service is a threat to their way of life and that studying the Torah is a better way to support the state of Israel than fighting in the army. Israel began its genocide of Palestinians on the national scale, I guess, in October 2023, but they've been killing them way longer than that. Israeli forces are currently primarily engaged in flattening the Gaza Strip, included by demolishing homes and residential buildings to ensure the displacement of Palestinians and prevent them from returning home. The Israeli military seeks to push the over 2 million population in Gaza into a concentration camp to be built on the ruins of the southern city of Rafah on the Gaza-Egypt border. From there, they can be forcibly expelled to foreign countries as refugees. And then Israeli businessmen plan to rebuild Gaza as a modern, technologically advanced region to be settled by Israeli Jews and fuck the people that live there. So Haredi Jews, they be interesting to see what happens with them as things progress. Because if they really need those people and they don't show up, may start seeing a civil war on your hands there. So in the UK, I love Declassified UK. They're always like, they always out the people there. As the speaker doubles down over refusals to disclose Israeli emails. What's this about? Oh, this person here with the Michael Jackson glove on? House of Commons Speaker Lindsey Hoyle has doubled down on his attempt to block the release of emails he sent to Israeli politicians. Hoyle flew to Israel on a solidarity visit in November 2023 and was photographed with the country's ambassador to the UK, Zippy Hatovli. But on Monday, Declassified revealed how he personally prevented his emails from being disclosed under the Freedom of Information Act. According to the FOIA response, Hoyle formed the reasonable opinion that disclosure of the information would be likely to prejudice the effective conduct of public affairs. Oh, how utterly British. It added that this is an absolute exemption and the public interest test does not apply. Hoyle cited an obscure loophole to the FOIA Act, which experts describe as a get-out-of-jail-free card for public authorities that want to withhold information. It means that in his role as Speaker, he is considered the only qualified person in the Commons to decide whether disclosure could undermine the effective conduct of public affairs. And if it has to do with his emails, I'm pretty sure he's saying, yes, it could undermine the effective conduct of public affairs. This applies even when his own emails are the subject of the FOIA request, giving him free rein to keep his work secret. Declassified appealed against the decision, but Hoyle said yesterday that he would not alter his position. A letter from the House of Commons states, "We have asked Mr. Speaker to reconsider his reasonable opinion," and he has now confirmed that the exemption is maintained. The FOIA request covered any email sent between Hoyle and the Israeli embassy, as well as any correspondence with the Knesset and Labor Friends of Israel. Hoyle has boasted that his father helped found Labor Friends of Israel in the 1950s. Yeah, probably shouldn't be bragging about that now. In February last year, Hoyle was also the center of controversy when he broke parliamentary convention to block an S&P motion calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The motion also called for an end to the collective punishment of the Palestinian people. It sparked calls for him to resign amid reports that Labor had blackmailed him by threatening to vote him out of office. Responding to our original story, Scottish Greens co-leader Patrick Harvey told the national newspaper that in the circumstances of the genocide in Gaza, for Lindsey Hoyle to undertake a so-called solidarity visit is deplorable, and the fact he now wants to keep his correspondence private suggests that he knows this should never have happened in the first place. Declassified asked the House of Commons why Hoyle had personally intervened to block the disclosure. A spokesperson said it's completely incorrect to say that the Speaker personally intervenes in FOIA cases. The Speaker's approval is required for the application of any exemption under Section 36. Such an exemption is agreed to following advice from senior officials, including legal advice. They added, it is a well-established principle that to enable a free and frank exchange of views, that correspondence is confidential. Declassified is referring the FOIA case to the Information Commissioner's Office, which regulates FOIA requests. Yeah, so what's in those emails, huh? Why did you... I bet you there's a lot of people that have this correspondence. Yeah, Mr. T. Yeah, you look pretty good in them jeans. I pity the fool. But yeah, how deep does it go? How deep are people involved with Israel, right? Back here at home, apparently, as Israel's having trouble getting people involved in their fuckery, so does ICE here, as they're now recruiting teenagers. Yay! What could possibly go wrong? ICE is now recruiting teenagers. We're taking father-son bonding to a whole new level. That's actually from them. That's how the U.S. Department of Homeland Security on Wednesday told social media users that it is lifting age limits for immigration and customs enforcement applicants. Evidence critics say of the Trump administration's desperation to fill the ranks of federal agencies tasked with carrying out its cruel and illegal anti-immigration policies. In a move reminiscent of how the U.S. military attempted to stem flagging enlistment during the George W. Bush administration's so-called War on Terror by lowering recruitment standards to welcome felons, gang members, white supremacists, and high school dropouts, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem announced Wednesday that we are ending the age cap for ICE law enforcement. So no ICE caps. We told you the ICE caps were melting, and they're melting here too. This is where the Homeland Security, we're taking father and son bonding to a whole new level. Murder together. Be fascists, one and all. Approved applicants will be joining an agency rife with human rights and legal abuses as it scrambles to satisfy alleged ICE arrest quotas and President Trump's desire to carry out the biggest mass deportation campaign in the nation's history, a campaign of kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment and expulsion of innocent people, family separation, concentration camps, terrorization of American communities, alleged torture and sexual crimes, and many other outrages. Noem told Fox and Friends Wednesday that in addition to lifting the 40-year-old age cap, ICE applicants can now be as young as 18. What could possibly go wrong? Independent journalist Tina Vasquez quipped on Blue Sky. Author Patrick S. Tomlinson wrote on Twitter's that ICE opening up recruiting to teenagers because they can't find enough adults willing to be their racist stormtroopers is some real dystopian shit. Wednesday's announcement is the latest Trump administration efforts to lure 10,000 new recruits, including by offering $50,000 sign-up bonuses and student loan repayment assistance. Policies that can be paid for thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act's historic funding for ICE. They could pay for that anyway. They don't need that for that. So yeah, $50,000 to sign up and student loan repayment assistance. Yeah, the NAACP. Want your student loans canceled? Trump has outlined a new way. Selling your soul. Some critics pointed to a similar move to increase recruitment at U.S. Customs and Border Protection, where lower hiring standards resulted in increased reports of sexual misconduct and corruption among border recruits. Wow, you hire lesser people and shitty things happen. Boy, you never put those two together. If they start waiving requirements there like they did for Border Patrol, you're going to have an exponential increase in officers that are shown the door after 3 years because there's some issue. Former senior ICE official Jason Hauser told the AP last week. Sunrise Movement, the youth-led climate campaign, offered some friendly advice for those considering working for ICE. Instead of joining the Gestapo, perhaps find a unionized workplace that's not involved in kidnapping instead. Ooh, sizzle. Kitty likes to scratch. Meow. Right? They open up all this money for people to join ICE, and nobody wants to do it. And all the people, and it's the same shitty people that's joining the police forces. They lowered those too. Gave more money. Go out there, crackheads. On crackheads. Meanwhile, Trump, he's not done there. He signs order requiring universities to disclose admission data. You like that? Trumpy has signed an executive order that seeks to require universities to disclose to the federal government data about their student admissions. Issued yesterday, the order cast doubt about whether universities were complying with a Supreme Court decision that repealed affirmative action, the practice of considering race among the factors for admission. Although the Supreme Court of the U.S. has definitively held that consideration of race in higher education admissions violates students' civil rights, the persistent lack of available data, paired with the rampant use of diversity statements and other overt and hidden racial proxies, continues to raise concerns about whether race is actually used in practice, the executive order says. Greater transparency is essential to exposing unlawful practices and ultimately ridding society of shameful, dangerous racial hierarchies. The order required the Department of Education to expand university reporting requirements for admissions within 120 days. Trump has long sought to exert greater control over the country's higher education system, which he and other prominent Republicans consider ideologically skewed. At the same time, Trump has also sought to dismantle initiatives to promote diversity, equality, and inclusion, goals known collectively by the acronym DEI, on the basis that such efforts are inherently discriminatory. This was such a priority for Trump that on January 20th, during the first day of his second term, he signed an executive order titled Ending Racial and Wasteful Government DEI Programs and Preferencing. That order repealed a previous directive issued under Biden to advance racial equality and better support underserved communities. It also called diversity initiatives illegal and immoral and ordered the termination of any such programs run by the federal government. Federal employment practices, including federal employee performance reviews, shall reward individual initiative, skills, performance, and hard work, and shall not under any circumstances consider DEI, the order explained. Trump has sought to extend his campaign against DEI beyond the auspices of the federal government, including to private enterprises. In the immediate aftermath of Trump's inauguration, major U.S. companies like the retailer Target and the car maker Ford have reframed or dialed back their DEI programming in an apparent response to the president's platform. But critics have questioned whether Trump may be exceeding his constitutionally mandated powers. Of course he is. He always is. That's why you see all these lawsuits. Some have argued that an embrace of diversity practices falls well within a private enterprise's free speech rights under the First Amendment of the Constitution, unless it's Israel. They also point out that without proactively supporting diversity in companies and universities, those institutions are likely to maintain imbalances in race, gender, and ability that do not reflect the wider public. That in turn keeps certain groups out of positions of power, perpetrating a history of segregation and bias in the U.S. But Trump and his allies have long argued that diversity-promoting practices use race, gender, and other factors to discriminate against qualified candidates, white people, who may belong to overrepresented groups, white people. In a subsequent executive order on January 21st, Trump pledged to restore merit-based opportunity in the U.S. Hardworking Americans who deserve a shot at the American dream should not be stigmatized, demeaned, or shut out of opportunity because of their race or sex, the executive order said. Under Trumpy, the Department of Education has taken steps to roll back diversity initiatives and other divisive ideology, quote, in schools, including by freezing federal funds to institutions that do not comply. That has put at loggerheads with academic freedom advocates who fear the independence of U.S. schools is being trampled in favor of advancing a political agenda. Opponents of diversity initiatives, however, have won significant victories, most recently in 2023. That year, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that affirmative action violated the U.S. Constitution's 14th Amendment, which asserts the right to equal protection under the law. That decision, delivered by the court's conservative supermajority, overturned decades of precedent and barred schools from using race as a factor for choosing students. Some conservative groups, however, have continued to question whether there is a bias in school admissions against white, male, and Asian students. The U.S. president has been among the skeptics clamoring for more information about university admissions and hiring practices, and he has made that demand a pillar in his fights with various top schools. Trump has yanked billions in federal contracts, grants, and other funds from schools, including Columbia University in New York, Harvard University in Massachusetts, and University of California, Los Angeles. That's UCLA, which reported this week a pause on $584 million in grants. To restore those suspended funds, Trump has called on university leaders to agree to his demands, including oversight over admissions. Columbia was the first major campus to do so. As part of its deal with the Trump administration, Columbia agreed to review its admissions practices and establish an advisory group to analyze recent trends in enrollment. The advisory group will then report to the president, according to the deal. The Trump administration has also launched federal investigations into universities alleging violations of civil rights law. Some universities have submitted to Trump's demands in part to bring those probes to a close. On July 30th, for instance, another Ivy League school, Brown University in Rhode Island, announced it had struck a deal in exchange for the continuation of its federal funding and a permanent closure to the open reviews and investigations the Trump administration had launched. As part of the deal, however, Brown agreed to spend $50 million on workforce development programs and maintain merit-based admissions policies. No proxy for racial admission will be tolerated, the deal reads. Brown may not use personal statements, diversity narratives, or any applicant reference to racial identity as a means to introduce or justify discrimination. Still, some schools have resisted Trump's demands, most notably Harvard, the nation's oldest university. In April, Harvard President Alan Garber rejected an argument proposed by the Trump administration, which would have required a comprehensive audit of the school's hiring and admission practices. That data would have then been shared with the federal government. No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue, Garber wrote at the time. So there you go. With that was a long one. So that's the update there with Trumpy and the schools, and I'm sure more will fall. They usually do. Finally, we mentioned India's President Modi, or their Prime Minister Modi, and Trump's relationship, right? And why Modi will not bow, will always bow to Trump. And one of the reasons why is that Rahul Gandhi, the opposition leader there, says Modi can't resist Trump due to Adani probe. What does that mean? That's the gentleman there. India's opposition leader Rahul Gandhi on Wednesday assailed Prime Minister Narendra Modi for not being able to stand up to U.S. President Donald Trump due to ongoing probe into Gautam Adani, business tycoon considered a close ally of the Prime Minister. The reason Prime Minister Modi cannot stand up to President Trump despite his repeated threats is the ongoing U.S. investigation into Adani. One threat is to expose the financial links between Modi, AA, and Russian oil deals, Gandhi said in a post on Twitter. Modi's hands are tied. The Indian National Congress, the INC, leaders' remarks referred to the U.S. investigation into alleged bribes paid by Adani to secure lucrative government contracts. Apart from the U.S. probe, Adani Group, along with its 13 offshore investors, is facing an investigation by the Securities and Exchange Board of India since Hindenburg research in 2023 alleged the group's improper use of tax havens. The group has consistently denied any wrongdoings. The Russian oil deal remarks made by Gandhi are to be taken against the backdrop of New Delhi's purchase of Russian oil, which has become a point of contention between India and the U.S. See, bringing it all back. President Trump, who is rather unhappy with India's dealings with Russia, has threatened to further increase tariffs from current 25% on Indian goods. They're fueling the war machine, and if they're going to do that, then I'm not going to be happy, Trump said a day earlier. Adani is the owner of the Adani Group, which has interests in everything from power generation and Australian coal mines to cement, media, food, airport terminals, and Israeli ports. The meteoric rise in the share prices of Adani's units, the flagship Adani Enterprises, rose more than 1,000% in 5 years, helped make the conglomerate staggeringly wealthy and fund further expansion. The tycoon's conglomerate offered Modi the use of a private company jet during the 2014 election campaign that swept his Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party to office. A few years ago, Adani executed a hostile takeover of broadcaster NDTV, a television news service considered one of the few media outlets willing to outwardly criticize Modi. Adani batted away press freedom fears, but told the Financial Times that journalists should have the courage to say when the government is doing the right thing every day. In November 2024, the Adani Group was indicted with accusations of paying more than $250 million to Indian government officials to secure lucrative contracts worth more than $2 billion. In further charges, Adani and seven other officials It further charges Adani and 7 other officials with lying about the bribery in order to raise capital from international investors, including those in the U.S. In June of 2020, a renewable energy company owned by Indian billionaire Gautam Adani won what it called the single largest solar development bid ever awarded, an agreement to supply 8 gigawatts of electricity to a state-owned power company. But there was a problem. Local power companies did not want to pay the prices the state company was offering, jeopardizing the deal, according to U.S. authorities. To save the deal, Adani allegedly decided to bribe local officials to persuade them to buy the electricity. The alleged hundreds of millions of dollars in bribes promised to local Indian officials caught the attention of the U.S. Justice Department and Securities and Exchange Commission, and be the SEC, as Adani's companies were raising funds from U.S.-based investors in several transactions starting in 2021. This account of how the alleged scheme unfolded is drawn from a federal prosecutor's 54-page criminal indictment of Adani and 7 of his associates, and 2 parallel civil SEC complaints which extensively cite electronic messages between the scheme's alleged participants. In early 2020, the Solar Energy Corporation of India awarded Adani Green Energy and another company, Azure, there's that name again, Power Global, contracts for a 12-gigawatt solar energy project expected to yield billions of dollars in revenue for both companies, according to the indictment. It was a major step forward for Adani Green Energy, run by Adani's nephew, Sagar Adani. Up until that point, the company had only earned roughly $50 million in its history and had yet to turn a profit, according to the SEC complaint. But the initiative soon hit roadblocks. Local state electricity distributors were reluctant to commit to buying the new solar power, expecting prices to fall in the future, according to an April 7, 2021 report by the Institution for Energy Economics and Financial Analysis, a think tank. Sagar Adani and the Azure CEO at the time discussed the delays and hinted at bribes on the encrypted messaging application WhatsApp, according to the SEC. When the Azure CEO wrote on November 24, 2020, that the local power companies are being motivated, Sagar Adani allegedly replied, "Yep, but the optics are very difficult to cover." In February 2021, Sagar Adani allegedly wrote to the CEO, "Just so you know, we have doubled the incentives to push for these acceptances." The SEC did not name the Azure CEO as a defendant, but Azure's securities filings showed the CEO at the time was Ranjit Gupta. Gupta was charged by the Justice Department with conspiracy to violate an anti-bribery law. He did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Earlier this year, Adani and his company's representatives met Trump administration officials seeking dismissal of criminal charges in the bribery probe, Bloomberg reported in May, citing people familiar with the matter. In June 2025, Adani denied any wrongdoing in response to U.S. allegations of bribery, telling shareholders that no individual from the group has been charged under the U.S. Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Despite all the noise, the facts are that no one from the Adani Group has been charged with violating the FCPA or conspiring to obstruct justice, Adani said at the company's annual general meeting. Even in the face of the storms and relentless scrutiny, the Adani Group has never backed down, he said. So, apparently, Modi is in league with these cats. And isn't that sort of the thing? Isn't that what we've been talking about, like Jeffrey Epstein and like how he had control over people, you know, blackmailing people? Because you get that high up in power, chances are you got there by nefarious means. And if you piss off the people that helped got you there, then they can always turn against you. Right? The hell? Okay, there we go. I don't know why I did that. All right, well, that's it for the newsy part of the show. Don't forget, our buddy Kevin is coming up later with Black Bear News. I think around noon on the West Coast is when he does it. So if you can help him out too, he lost his home in the LA fires. He's got a GoFundMe down below too. If you could check that out, if you can't donate, if you could share that out, we appreciate you here at the show. We'd like to help out our pals. And of course, our buddy Cowboy Kitty and his sister-in-law dealing with that. Both of those links are down below in the description. Finally, today, our buddy Chuck, the alien, you may have seen him in our chats here floating around in his spaceship. Well, he does this show that's called Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show. UFO Show Intergalactic. I had that last part because I'm a Beastie Boys fan. But he's got his show premiering tonight on, the episode 5 is premiering tonight. And so we got a little teaser for you to check it out. Here we go.
Thank you for calling the Sun. All solar operators are currently assisting other callers. Your call is important to us. Please stay on the line, and a representative will be with you before the next solar eclipse. If this is an emergency, please press 2. Thank you for pressing 2. We hope you've been provided with the temporary relief that many callers experience from pressing a button that has not in any way prioritized your call. Please stay on the line.
There you go. And that's tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time on YouTube and Rumble. It's Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show. UFO Show Intergalactic, Another Dimension. Should be a fun time this evening. It's going to be a premiere, so he'll be in the chat, maybe talking to you guys and us guys and gals and all our other pals. That sort of thing. So that's tonight. Chuck's Intergalactic UFO Show. Part of our why aren't you doing that? Okay. We like to promote everybody in the space, so.
Thank you for calling.
No, thank you. I don't know why you're not doing this. What the hell? Okay, whatever. We'll fix this later. We'll fix it in post. Yeah, so that's going to be it for today. Oh, don't forget, tomorrow night we got this thing. Some jerk is going to be around telling stories. The chickens. It's a secret show. Midnight Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on YouTube, Rumble, and the Book of Faces. We'll be hanging out with all our pals and having fun and trying to break away from all the nonsense for at least one evening to have some fun. That show was not fun today because it was a lot full of bad news, but I'm glad that you were here to take in the information. Hopefully we can spread that out to people outside our little joint here and try to get people aware of what's going on in the world because they are being propagandized. They're being lied to. And we really need to alleviate that situation. So also Willie Bragg, I think, has got a show tonight too. maybe around 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Central, something like that. I'm not quite sure. Hey, Mystery, good to see you, dear. Good to see you. Yeah, we were off last week. I was working on some graphics and stuff like that, and I think not anything really changed with the show, but it added a few little bells and whistles, so, and fixed a few things behind the scenes that I really needed to fix. So, yeah, so that's gonna be it for me. I appreciate you. Love each and every one of you. If you can donate to our show, links are down below here as well. If you want to become a Patreon member, we have the $1 broke as a joke tier, or the $5 oh, look at you money bags tier. Either one is appreciated. Even if you're just sharing out the links, that works too. All help is appreciated. And we'd like to do this full time at some point, but we can only do that with your help. And I know things are tough. I totally understand that. And I'll keep bringing the tough news, unfortunately, because we need to know the truth about what's going on in the world. In the meantime, this show itself will be back on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Central, 9 a.m. Mountain, 8 a.m. Pacific time on YouTube, Rumble, and the Book of Faces. Like I said, we'll be back tomorrow night at midnight Eastern for the Secret Show for funsies. Check out all our pals here that we're promoting as well. Check out their channels and support them as well. We'll see you when we see you. Peace.
This is City Alpha 5. Woo!